Hey guys, this is Mike Tarala with Qlik, and I'm pleased to provide a short series of videos that will introduce you to Qlik GeoAnalytics and its various capabilities. In this first video, I'll cover our new optional add-on service to Qlik GeoAnalytics, Qlik Geocoding. Now first, Qlik Geocoding is an add-on subscription service to Qlik GeoAnalytics Base and Qlik GeoAnalytics Enterprise Server. The geocoding operations are available as part of the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector, and these are listed as address point lookup and point to address lookup. As soon as you have acquired the service from Qlik, you will automatically get access to these new lookup operations from the connector. Now, Qlik Geocoding can be used for address to coordinate lookups and vice versa. The service is hosted by us, where addresses and key fields get sent to a remote server for lookup. You can perform forward geocoding, address to point, used when you have address information and want to plot locations down to the street level, and reverse geocoding, point to address, good for translating GPS coordinates to their corresponding address locations. This subscription service also comes with favorable terms and conditions that benefit you. You can perform up to 1 million lookups during a 12-month period, and you are allowed to store the results for reuse without any restrictions. Therefore, a best practice is to store your initial results. We provide a best practice template for this in our documentation that I will provide. Okay, so now that we got that stuff out of the way, let me show you how you can use the Qlik Geocoding service. Okay, so if you have seen some of my previous content, you may know by now I like to be as thorough as possible. I don't like to make assumptions. So I have a browser opened up, and I'm going to go to help.qlik.com. And then from the products list, I'm going to select Qlik GeoAnalytics, and then you're going to see an option here for Qlik Geocoding. This is just showing you where you can get more information. Now, yes, it'll bring you to the IWO website, but branded for Qlik. They're working on migrating a lot of this over to our existing help site over time. However, here's where you can get the documentation. Here's where you can get the template, look at best practices and guidelines, etc. The assumption at this point is you have already installed Qlik GeoAnalytics on your enterprise server. We also offer a version for QlikSense Desktop as well. Basically, it's enabled through a license key. And I'm not going to go through that because that part is pretty much assumed. It's fairly simple and straightforward. Now, I'm going to use a Amazon environment where I have QlikSense June 2018 installed. I also have the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector installed. And I already created an app here. I called it Stores Geocoding. And I'm just going to give you an example of what we're going to create over time within the series of videos. There's a lot of neat capabilities, both using the native map component as well as the GeoAnalytics map components. So I'm going to give you kind of both examples through the series of videos. But what we have here is some video game store information in my area, and we have routes and we have ratings and so forth. And this is some cool stuff that I developed when preparing for this video. But what we're going to do in this first video is just show you how we can get the address to point translation using the Qlik Geocoding service. So to get started, I'm going to create a new app, and we're going to call this Mike's Video Game Stores. Okay, our app is created. I'm going to open the app. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add data to this app. Okay, and as you know, adding data can be done a few different ways. To keep things simple, I'm just going to navigate to my File Explorer. I'm going to grab my Video Game Store Excel file and drop it on the canvas. So this is being uploaded and attached right now to my app that is on my Amazon Cloud server. Okay, and here's some of the fields. So right now I'm just going to turn off the Insight Advisor, go into Edit Mode, and I'm just going to create a very simple table component that's going to display the data that we had in the Excel spreadsheet. So we have the ID of our store, and then we have the country, city, store name, and zip code. Okay, just showing you that information that's there. And when you do this, you might want to test it with a smaller amount of items first of all also, because remember, it does count towards your transaction limit. Okay, so here's the 20 stores that we have. We're going to get the coordinates of this and plot these on Qlik GeoAnalytics map. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the data load editor, because the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector is only accessible from the data load editor, as you see in this list here. Okay, so if I was just going to, create a new connection, you can see I have the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector in this list. Okay, I guess for argument's sake, let's delete this connector. And I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to select Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector. Okay, from the GeoAnalytics server, you're going to choose Cloud and give the connection a name. I'm just going to call it Qlik Geocoding. So basically any name you want to give it. Click Test Connection and click Save. So now we have the connector. Now, in the auto-generated section, this is what's created when I drag and dropped the Excel file. So you could ignore most of this, but what's important to use at this point is this table alias called addresses. Okay, so you're going to want to grab that. Now you can't copy it when it's locked. So if I just click Unlock and then scroll down, I can go over here and right click and copy this and use that later. Okay, so first thing, adding your data that has your addresses, however it is stored and brought into the system. And then I'm going to add a new tab, and we're going to call this Geocoding. And then I'm going to go to my connector, and I'm going to choose Select Data. So the way this connector works, it's basically a user interface that accepts parameters and then it writes code and inserts that script. So this particular interface here, if you don't have training in this case or haven't followed the documentation, it could be a little confusing. Luckily, I was able to work with the product team and create this video to kind of show you how it's done. It's not entirely difficult. It's just following the steps in the documentation here by clicking on this little question mark. Kind of explains what the parameter values and etc. are. So you can see the operation. Address point lookup is available. There are other operations available here for other features and capabilities within Qlik GeoAnalytics, but the one we're interested in is the address point lookup. Again, only available or functional when you have the Qlik geocoding service. Okay, search text we're going to leave blank. Now, country, state, city, postal code, basically these inputs are going to contain the name of the fields. Okay, and it's case sensitive. So if I go to the Excel spreadsheet, you can see I have country, zip, state, city, street. Okay, so it's important to have the location information that you're going to use for the lookup. So for country, our field is country. For state, it's state. For city, it's city. And for postal code, it's zip. And for street, it's street. Okay, so once again, verifying that information. Now, I like to be a little bit more thorough. In this case here, you don't really need the state or the city sometimes or the zip. It depends on how accurate you want this to be. I like to include as much as possible because obviously I want it to be as accurate as possible. But best practice states that the country, city, and street usually are sufficient. Now, there is also a match threshold. Here's the quality of the data, or it's a quality ranking, so you can specify at what value that comes back with the lookup match if you want to include it or not in the list. Once again, these parameters you can learn more about here at the help. Okay, now the service to use for lookup is going to be default, and the name in this case here is the data set that is going to be created from the lookup. Okay, so the address table. So in this particular instance here, I'm just going to call this ADDR lookup, and it's going to actually prefix all of the tables that come back with the results with this particular name. Now the type here is going to be loaded table. Now there are other ways of pulling in the lookup data. We already have that initial table loaded, and if you remember, we named it addresses, or the alias of that table was addresses. So we're going to choose type loaded table. And then you're going to see here it's prompting us for the table name. So I'm just going to paste in addresses. So once again, this is the name of the table alias from our previous auto-generated section that loaded our address data. Now, table fields, key, and geometry, these are the fields that are going to be used within the lookup. So once again, you have to replicate what you see in this particular instance here. Okay, it should always start with a key field, in this case here our ID, and then we can just replicate what we see above: country, state, city, zip, and street. But I'm not going to put street in here. I just want to show you what happens when you click next. It's going to come back with an error, and it's say unable to parse request. Column is point, not string. So once again, because we didn't make a change to the geometry types and stuff, you're going to get errors at this point. And these errors could be a little bit confusing if you're not sure how to use this particular operation. Okay, so this case here, our geometry type is actually going to be a, let's see, we have point, line. It's none at this point. We don't have a geometry type. So a geometry type basically could be your coordinates. It could be an address name, latitude, longitude, etc. But we're not using this field. What I'm told is that we display all field inputs here to support various operations. Future UI improvements will delete certain fields that are not applicable in this case here. Okay, now getting back to the table fields, key geometry, inputs, etc. Notice I have street up here, but I didn't put street here. I'm going to click next, and you're going to see trying to get unknown column named street in dataset ADDR lookup. Okay, and the reason I'm getting that is because I did not include street here. So all I'm going to have to do is add street. And now I have all my fields that match the operation parameters. Only load distinct. We're not going to touch that. Location ID suffix, blah, 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 auto. Again, look at the help to find out more. But this is all we need now to basically perform the Qlik Geocoding lookup. So I click next. And it's going to give you a preview of the script that's generated, and it's going to show you the tables that are coming back. Okay, so it will actually return the original table that you defined in the beginning, because we said it was ADDR lookup. The reason for that is because if you don't have loaded table data and you're pulling it from, let's say, another service, you might want that data to be part of your analysis. So this gives you the option to include that as an optional table, but we really don't need that for this instance. What we need is the address point lookup table. And you can see the various fields that are coming up. Address, the geometry, that's the coordinates of the points, country, lookup admin. So these are other parameters of values that come back from the lookup. So I'm going to click Insert Script. And then at this point, I'm just going to click Load Data. But before I do that, I want to show you that if you made a mistake, you can delete the script and then go back and then make your changes to your operation parameters and input fields. And then click Next again and then repeat that process. That's if you've made a mistake and you want to insert the script. Once you exit the data load editor though, these parameters that have been pre-filled will not be there anymore. They're also working on some UI improvements to remember so you can kind of edit your settings. Okay, so at this time, just keep in mind that you can only reuse the parameters that are populated to make changes when you're in the existing data load editor session. Okay, so we have our geocoding script added, and now I'm just going to click Load Data. And what it's going to do is now use those 20 stores. You can see lines fetch 20. It's performing the lookup operations. Click Close. I'm now going to go to the data model viewer. And there you can see now we have our original addresses table. And you can see it's linked to the address point lookup result. And there's our various parameters. Okay, and there's the address lookup match, etc. So at this point here, I'm just going to go to the app overview, go into my new sheet, click Edit. And for this instance here, we have a couple things we can do. We can bring in our native map component. Okay, this is the one that comes default with Qlik Sense, but if you have Qlik GeoAnalytics and you have the Qlik GeoAnalytics Connector and the geocoding service, you might want to actually use the Qlik GeoAnalytics map extensions or components that have been installed. These have a little bit more power and capability. And a lot of this power and capability is also being translated over to the native mapping component over time, as you have seen. So I'm going to click my Qlik GeoAnalytics map. And then I'm going to grab my bubble layer. Okay, I'm going to configure my bubble layer by adding a dimension. And in this case, this dimension is going to be the address lookup geometry. And there are all my street point coordinates. Okay, and these are down, as I mentioned, directly to the street level. That was in analysis mode. That's better. So here. All right. So if we wanted to make some additional changes to this, there are certain things that we can do within the appearance settings of the particular map or of the layer. So for example, here, shape and size, can make it squares, colors, turn off auto colors, make them yellow, etc. But for this part of the video, I'm going to stop, and in the next video I'll talk about a couple other additional features. I'll talk about using the closest operator and maybe using a line layer to track the distance from, let's say, a certain point, and then also working with the info bubbles and showing you some custom options with that as well. At this point, as I'd mentioned, there are some best practices to follow that are available from the documentation, and we have an actual presentation here that you can view and a template you can follow. So if you click on Qlik Geocoding template, we'll show you some simple operations to follow. Now, if you want to download the QVF file and you click template app, now if you're using Chrome, you're going to get this error. It's actually trying to translate the QVF file. So what you're going to do at that point is just right click on the QlikSense app and click Save Link As, and then you'll have the QVF file. Firefox, if you click it, it'll automatically prompt you for download. So keep that in mind. Okay, so one other thing to mention about the template app, within the template app, let me bring up the template app. So you right click, Save Link As, and click Geocoding Template QVF. What I'm going to do here, let's install the template. Okay, so now I'm importing the Qlik Geocoding template into my environment. Go back to my QlikSense homepage and refresh. Okay, there's the Qlik Geocoding template. Okay, and then you can follow along, etc. But most of what you need to follow along with in here is in the data load editor. So the geocoding service is as simple as I showed you, but there are things that we've added here, such as writing to QVD files and storing the results, and then selecting new addresses and performing incremental loads. Okay, so this template is a little bit more involved, and then we actually added some input and result statistics too, which is actually pretty cool. So if you navigate to your input results, they've added some charts to show you some of the quality of the input, the results, average match, etc. Okay, so that is Qlik Geocoding, and that should provide you with a sufficient amount of information to help you get started. Thanks for watching. Please check out these other great resources to learn more about Qlik GeoAnalytics, Qlik, and QlikSense, and I look forward to working with you in the Qlik community. I'll see you on the next video, guys. Take care.